My name is Alex Mata. Today is the 26th of October, 2002, and my location on the 11th of September 2001 was in the Del Lorenzo Tri-Care Health Clinic. I'm a physical therapist. Um, Being in the Navy, that's where I work, and that's where my day kind of pretty much started. I guess from the beginning, to give you a little bit about myself. Um, my name is Alejandro Acosta Mata, but not everybody can say that, so I go by Alex. Uh, I come from Uvalde, Texas, which is a small town in southwest Texas, about 80 miles southwest of San Antonio. And 4 years ago, I joined the military. I wanted to do my part, serve my country, and so I took a commission and as a medical service corps officer in the United States Navy, specifically as a physical therapist. And being here in the D.C. area, my assignments took me from Bethesda, the Naval Hospital, to Quantico, Virginia, and then now at the Pentagon. That day, the 11th of September, 2001, I guess it started like any other day. Up at about 4:15 in the morning, get down to my office and start going through the computer, the phone messages, trying to take care of patients. 07, the clinic actually opens, and that's when we started seeing patients that day. I work with a great staff of Army, Navy, and civilians, and Petty Officer Teresa Summers was there, and the two technicians that are civilians would be Justin Kinnaman and Nate Shaw, and our civilian receptionist, Miss Sandra Washington, and I work with an Army captain, Brendan Sullivan. We were all there that day, and I'm sorry, I think Sergeant Elizabeth Bowser, she was also there. She's since left. So we were all there. 07 starts up, we start seeing patients, and that morning we had the TV on, as we normally do on CNN, and Petty Officer Summers had come into my office. I was seeing patients, and she said that a plane had crashed into one of the World Trade Center towers. It's a pretty bad accident, I acknowledge that, but we kept going. We were pretty busy, and then I guess maybe about 10 minutes later she came in and said that another plane had crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center, and at that moment I remember feeling how that wasn't an accident, and maybe a little tension in that, wow, what else could happen? Being in the Washington, D.C. area, there are plenty of potential targets, and so we kind of let the day continue. I guess it was around 9 o'clock. I was seeing patients. I was running behind, as I tend to do, and I had finished up with a patient, and I just pulled back my 9:30 patient, and I believe it was, I don't know, it was about that time frame. I'd say 9:30. I was working with this patient and talking to him, and then I remember hearing in the clinic there was a nervous tension, a busyness. People were moving kind of quickly, and then one of the staff providers, one of the nurses from the front, came running down to the physical therapy clinic and said, "We're evacuating the building. We're evacuating the clinic." And one of the first things we do, of course, is we get our patients out. They don't need to be there, and so we removed people from the clinic, from our physical therapy section, and then we followed out. We cleared our clinic, and we were going out the main exit of the Del Lorenzo Tri-Care Health Clinic. And I remember getting to the front, to the lobby, and I looked up on the TV, and there was a picture of the Pentagon, and there was smoke billowing over it, and there was a sign or a caption on the bottom that said, Pentagon attacked. And I couldn't believe it, because that's the building we were in. And so we left, and as we were going out the front door, there was a mass of people trying to leave hurriedly, frantically. People were trying to get out so hard, and they wouldn't even think to open the door. They were just smacking into the doors, and unfortunately the glass had been broken. And so we were a little nervous by that, and we continued to move out in an orderly fashion as best as you could. And so we got out that north entrance out there of Corridor 8. We began to cross over a little bridge for pedestrians will cross over, going to the north parking lot. And a lot of people were moving out. A lot of people were nervous. I was a little nervous myself, to be honest. And So we kept moving our people, and we tried to keep all our physical therapy staff together because, we want to keep everyone together, make sure they're all safe, have them all accounted for. So we moved to a little grassy area right near the POAC, which is the Pentagon Officer Athletic Complex. It's a gymnasium there for Pentagon employees. And I remember we were sitting there, and we set up, and we just kind of sat down, and we'd been through fire drills before. But this wasn't the same feeling. And I remember as we were crossing over, actually, on the pedestrian bridge, looking over my shoulder, and Petty Officer Summers was there as well, and I remember the surprise in her face when I saw her. And I remember seeing big, black, billowy smoke coming across the building. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining and blue skies, but then this immense black smoke just came over the building, and it would start to cover the sun, almost like a cloudy day or a fall day. But so we moved. Like I said, we were in that grassy area, and we started, receiving patients. We sat down, and people were coming. Not many, just a couple here and there. And there was, again, this franticness, a lot of people still coming out of the building. And so we sat up there, and it was deemed that we need to go in because we weren't getting the patients that were, probably generated, that we weren't receiving them there. And so I remember Justin, he had gone back into the clinic, I think just to kind of help out, and they have these blue vests that they give to the clinic personnel to designate us as medical staff. And I remember he came back out, and he said, we're going in. He handed out all these blue vests to us, and it was indeed the truth. I mean, everyone else was putting on their vests, and all the physical therapy staff, we put on these vests, and we ran back into the building across the pedestrian bridge. And there were so many people coming, we couldn't get through, and so we started yelling, medical, gang away, clear the way. And so people started moving to the right, and there was a single line of healthcare providers running back into the building through Corridor 8. And I remember at that time we were running, and I was in my uniform and thinking that, I don't really know how safe it is to go where we're going, but, there are people who need help, and that's one of the reasons we're medical, is that we like to help people. And sometimes it is at the cost of lives, or within the fear of, you might get hurt, but you want to help somebody. So we were running into the building, and I remember we were all running in the single file line, and all the physical therapy staff was going in. I was very proud of them, and I was glad, since I'm an officer, I'm a lieutenant junior grade at the time. I've just become a lieutenant. We supervise these people, and I remember feeling so proud that they were all wanting and willing to go in there. And, they all had families. They all had things to sacrifice, their life, to say the least. Yet they all ran back in the building, and I was very proud of them. And I'm still very proud to know that I work with such a great group of people. And so we ran into the building, and it was very automatic. I mean, I've done some training before in a combat medical course, and they've done assimilations and shooting of guns and things like that, and a lot of chaos. And I remember running down this hallway, and it was very quiet. And like I said, it was very automatic. And we ran back, and all I could see was like a tunnel. It was like almost tunnel vision that I had. And I could hear my feet as I was running across the floor. And then we ran back into the center courtyard, and the little automatic doors were open. And we ran through the inner courtyard. And in the middle, there's what they used to call the Ground Zero Cafe. And I remember running around the side of it, and I could see smoke coming out, lots of black smoke. And I remember seeing people laid out all across the grass, and there were more of the medical providers there from the clinic, trying to help people. People couldn't breathe. They were choking, and they were also burned. And they were choking so much that they couldn't, get air. So there were people trying to give them oxygen and trying to start, trying to intubate, start tubes so that they can breathe. In the same breath, the people were kicking and screaming, and burned and scared. And so I remember I ran up, and the first person I saw was an Army nurse, Captain Jennifer Glidewell, a great lady, outstanding lady. And I remember running up to her, and she was right there, we're right at the entrance of the 4th corridor, and smoke billowing out. And poor thing, she had a horrible, scared look on her face. She was almost going to cry, but in the same breath, she was very calm, and she knew what she needed to do. And she told me, she said, clear out all the walking wounded, all the minimals. We need to get them out of here. And I said, all right. And I remember I turned to Petty Officer Summers and I said, we need to clear out all the minimals. We need to get these people out of here. And so she ran and started moving people. There were so many people walking around in a daze, wounded, and they just didn't need to be there because we didn't know what completely was going on. What other bad things were there? And so we talked just briefly, and she ran off and did things, and then I went up and I started trying to clear out people as well that didn't need to be there. And I ran into one of my patients, interesting enough, who was kneeling down trying to help out another person who was, kind of burnt and very scared. And I remember I told her, I said, ma'am, you need to get out of here. And she looked at me and like she didn't know who I was. She didn't recognize me. She didn't comprehend the English I was speaking. And I told her again, I said, ma'am, you need to leave. This is a dangerous area. And then she left. And then we, had more people come in and help out that other person. And then we just started bouncing around. Myself, I found, there was a gentleman who was badly burned, and the medical providers were out there trying to stabilize that person and get him out of there. And I ran around. I remember helping. There was a lady that was brought out on a broken door, and she had a broken leg. And we had heard an announcement that there was another plane inbound, and we need to clear out. And I was very fearful at that time. I was very scared. And so we started, myself and a bunch of Army officers, we got this lady on the table, and we moved her back to closer to the Corridor 8, the exit where we had come out into the center courtyard. And I talked to Petty Officer Summers. I said, we need to get people out of here because there's another plane inbound. And that, of course, increased the tension of that whole scene. People were moving frantically, trying to move the people who could not move, and we were loading them onto these little ambulances and little cars that we could find. And we were moving people out as quickly as possible. And I remember another big bunch of black smoke coming into the center courtyard where we were. And I remember having a bad headache. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, my head is hurting. And then I remember thinking, oh my goodness, what if there's something else in the smoke, in this plane, or whatever it was. We had no idea what it was, but whatever caused the explosion. And that's one of the first things you learn when you go to a medical course is you make sure the scene is safe. And of course the answer is always no. The scene is not safe. But we ran in there, and we didn't know if there was any kind of nuclear, biological, or chemical agents. And I was wondering if my head, having a headache the way I did, if that was if that was something that was occurring. I was very scared at that time. The fear was like a roller coaster. It would go up and down, and at the time I became very scared because I thought I was going to die. And then, interesting enough, before I could completely freak out, this immense calm came over me. I don't know where that came from. I could only imagine it was God, settling me down because we still had a job to do, and I was still trying to help people, and I needed to keep my wits about me. And I remember just this calm came over me like a blanket. It settled me down. It made me feel relaxed. And I was able to think back, and I said, to myself, I said, Alex, it's okay. It's okay if you die here because you're helping people. You're doing your job. What God has given you, the gifts to take care of people, you're using them today, and you're doing a good thing. And if you die here, you're going to die with a lot of good people who are trying to do the right thing. And you were doing the right thing. You're trying to bring calm and caring to these individuals. So you just keep doing your job, and it's okay because you've done your part. And so as a result, I was able to calm down and get back into this and again start loading people and moving them out. And I remember stopping to help I think it was an Army major. He was laying on the ground, and there were two nurses. There was a nurse and a dentist that were working on him. Colonel Davitt, a wonderful lady, great lady, that was working with us. And then there was a dentist, Dr. Shull, great lady. They were both working on this patient and trying to start an IV. And I remember I was wrapping up his left hand. He was burned, and I was putting a bandage on him. And he wanted to get up. He wanted to get up to go back inside because he had two of his coworkers in there still inside the building, and as a healthcare provider, you need to take care of the patient, and there was not a whole lot of chance that we were going to go back in there, but you had to settle this gentleman down. And I told him, I said, "Sir, right now we need to take care of you." So I bandaged up his hand, and he kept trying to get up, and we'd set him down again, and we said, "We'll get you out of here, but you need to, lay down and rest." And I remember looking over to the nurse and the dentist, and they were so scared, poor ladies, and they were keeping their composure very well. But I remember seeing their hands shaking, and I said, "Well, I'm glad to know I'm not the only one who's scared out of their mind." And then we got that gentleman taken care of, and we got him out of there. We didn't go back in the building. And I remember, so we kept clearing up, and again, the reports were from the police department, the DPS, which is the police department. They said, "Y'all need to get out of here. There's another plane inbound." And of course, that makes you fearful again all over. And I remember at that time, it was about that time, one of the PT techs, Nate Shaw, came up to me. He's now in the Air Force. And he told me, he said, "Sir, we need to go into the building. There's still people inside." And, being the medical person, again, from my training, you learn you don't go into an unsafe scene. And I remember just out of my, just not even thinking, but about 2 seconds of thought, telling him, "Nate, we're not going in there. We're already in an unsafe area. And as it is, we may already have been compromised, but we're not going back in there. We need to take care of the people we have here, and we need to get them out of here." And that was a very hard decision to make, because I think maybe some people maybe died. But I told him, "We're not going in the building." And I looked over at Captain Sullivan. I told him, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make that decision, but I don't think it's safe for us to go in." And he said, "No, we're not going in." I said, "That's right. We need to finish the job here." And so we finished up, and we're still very scared because there was another plane coming. And we finished up. And at that time, we had to leave rather quickly because it just felt very bad. Like there was bad things that were occurring here. And more might occur. So we cleared the center courtyard. And Captain Sullivan and the rest of the group went back through Corridor 8, and Petty Officer Summers and myself, we broke off. We were just trying to get out of there, and I remember running, but we didn't want to leave anybody, so we got all the people who were still in there, and we scooted them out the second corridor of the Pentagon. And I remember, feeling like you couldn't run anywhere. Where do you run from something that could come down on top of you? You just do the best that you could, and you try to get as many people out as you could. And so we went out the second corridor, and we ended up on the south side of the Pentagon in the parking lot, and there was a group of the providers, of the medical providers that were in the courtyard with us, and we made our way from the south side all the way around under this bridge. I forget, I think it's Washington Boulevard. And there was a group of civilians that were gathering together there. And so we went there, and we had some medical supplies, and we took them. And we were under the bridge, and I remember wondering where the rest of our group was. I hoped they were on the other side, and we didn't hear any explosions or any other big ones. We heard some little ones, but nothing like a big major explosion. And so we waited under this bridge, hiding basically. And then we organized into more triage teams with the civilians, and there were yellow, red, green, and black. And I was in one of the teams, and what we do is we set up these triage teams, and we start moving forward to the crash site. And we carry all our bandages and all our gear. And so we were in a group. Petty Officer Summers and I were in a group, and we started moving out towards the crash site, but then we'd get again reports of a plane inbound. And so we'd gather all our gear again, and we'd run back under this bridge. And we must have done that all afternoon, back and forth, with such uncertainty, just trying to get ready and set up so we could receive additional patients, if there were any. And I remember thinking, I got to call my mom, I got to call my dad. They're probably worried, and my mom is a big worrier, and I didn't need her worrying. And so I remember we did that back and forth, and finally we were hiding under the bridge, and I remember one of the nicest sounds I've ever heard. I haven't heard a lot of it, but it was this. I think it was an Air Force jet. I think it was an F-16, and it came screaming across the sky. And I remember, thank goodness, we finally have somebody in the sky to protect us, because we're just out there. We're hiding under this bridge, and we had no no one to take care of us or to protect us. And that was a nice feeling. One of the few ones that I felt that day. And so finally we organized, and we were waiting, trying to go forward still, and we weren't able to. And then I remember I saw this Navy lieutenant, nurse corps officer. I wish I could think of her name. And I saw her, and I said, Lieutenant, I said, can I borrow your phone? She had a cell phone on her. I was like, I'll give you $20 right now. I just need to make a 10-second phone call, maybe. And she said, oh, no, go ahead. And so she let me borrow her phone. That was really nice of her. And I called home. I was just going to leave him a message. And surprisingly, my dad picked up the phone, because my dad's always at work, and I didn't expect him to be there. And I told him, I said, hey, how you doing, Pa? I called him Pa. And he said, I'm doing fine. And I said, just want to let you know I'm fine, and I'm helping out with the medical teams here, but I'm real busy, and I'm not going to have much time to talk. And my dad's not a very religious man, and but he does go to church. And he told me, God bless you, son. And I told him, tell Mom not to worry, and I'll try to call you back later. So I hung up, got back with my group, and we again started trying to go forward. And as it was, they had deployed, some of the team sent them forward, but my team with Petty Officer Summers, we didn't go. I guess they had enough help. And so then later on as the day was getting, it was, oh my gosh, it was such a long day. And it started about 9:30. I guess it was like, I don't know, 1700 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we moved forward to, there was the clinic, the De Lorenzo Clinic was trying to have an accountability done, so they asked that anybody under the bridge from the clinic go to another portion of the Pentagon, which is actually closer to the crash site, right on the highway. All the highway was closed, and so I went over there with Petty Officer Summers, and we met up with, with the rest of the group from the clinic, and we took accountability, and we tried to make sure everybody was fine. And then we set up a tent there, and that night, that's where our area was. We weren't able to go back in the building, and I had no idea where my car keys were or anything. So myself and Captain Sullivan and Petty Officer Summers, we ended up spending the night there on the road. Where there were some litters, or someone brought out some litters that were going to be used, and I remember just sleeping on that in my uniform. Actually, I was able to go in briefly, and I changed uniforms, and I put on some scrubs, and I was asleep on Washington Boulevard there on a litter. One of the guys from work took a picture of me, I remember. So there I was, crashed out. It must have been 2 in the morning. And but we all stayed there the night. It was kind of cold. And then we got up the next morning, and it was told that we need to get back into the building, and we need to resume a form of normalcy. So we went back, and we gathered our things, and early in the morning, this is 07, we ran back into or got back into the building, and it was still a haze of smoke. And when we were there, actually at the site the previous evening, we realized it was a plane and what had occurred, similar to that up in New York City. Not to the extent that those people had that experience, but ours was still plenty bad. So we went back into the building, and we tried to clean up our clinic. People who needed medical supplies did run back into the medical clinic, and all our supplies are in a secured storage bin that you need a key to get into, an access key, and no one had it, so unfortunately they had to smash all the glass on our supply carts, and so there was glass everywhere, and there were supplies everywhere. Our poor little clinic was trashed, but it was understandable, they needed supplies and all. So we went back in, and we started fixing up the clinic. And then from that day on, we basically stood a watch. A person from the clinic was tasked to go out to the crash site, where we had a couple of tents, and we had healthcare providers from Walter Reed, Bowling Air Force Base, I think even from Bethesda, and one of us from the clinic was basically the person in charge. And what we did was we would send in medical providers into the crash site area to work with individuals who were retrieving bodies, and maybe healthcare providers who had their asthma acting up could come to us for medical attention. And we also had, I guess, what is it? We had some psychological nurses that were there to help other individuals with stress management to kind of help out. So we were out there, and I guess I didn't go home till Wednesday night. Must have been 11:30 at night. And oh my gosh, my phone messages were full. My poor little answering machine couldn't hold anymore. And I remember trying to call back a couple of people and telling them, thanks for calling, I'm fine. And I just kind of kept doing that until I had to go to bed because I had to be back at work at 07. And I guess that went on maybe about 2 weeks. It was a big blur. I know one of my shifts I spent, the clinic was open for 24 hours all the time, daily from that time on. And we'd work 12-hour shifts. I'd work 12 hours at physical therapy, and I remember one day I had to go pull duty out at the crash site, so I worked 24 hours. I was very tired, and I don't even know what day of the week it was, but going home, it was just very, it was like a dream. I don't remember much, but we kept manning this tent and trying to help people out, still trying to get over, trying to push through and resume this normalcy that they've asked of us. But we continued doing that, and unfortunately there were things like bomb threats and fire alarms continually the following weeks, and we evacuate the building, we go back in, you just do it. It was a normal process, and it happened, it kept on, and now it's just very hard to believe that a year has gone by, and they've had another ceremony, another memorial, and those people are gone. 184 individuals, I guess is the count. I was very saddened by that because I knew some of those people, and I hope that I made the right decision. As an officer, they say you're supposed to make those decisions. I guess just like a manager or like the head of a family, you make decisions. It was a very tough one. I still think about it. I'm kind of a perfectionist, and it bothers a person who's a perfectionist and when they made a decision that impacts a lot of people's lives, and I still think about it. And I still work in the building, so it's there every day and it hasn't gone away. It's getting better, but it's still tough. I hope that those families that were affected by this can get over this. It's still, the war in Afghanistan is going on, and another potential war with Iran and Iraq, I should say, Iran, I believe. And it's just still very hard to believe. Many people's lives were affected that day. It's a very hard day in the history of our nation. I was very saddened by it. I was very proud that I worked with many fine members of the United States Armed Forces, and I am very proud of all those individuals. I was one of the few among many heroes that day, and they're wonderful people. I hope for future generations, I hope that if you don't serve, that you give the armed forces the respect they deserve. They don't do it for the money, and they don't do it looking for thank yous. They do it because they're Americans trying to serve their country and do their part. I can understand, because that was my reason for joining the military, was to do my part. And the military never got the respect it deserved. And I hope that the generations to come realize that they did a great thing. They helped many people, and they've done this for many years and never asked for anything. So before you go and you just say things without thinking, you should always remember to thank the firemen, the policemen, those individuals as well. They do a job every day and never ask for a thank you, as do the military members. They work hard, and they go on little sleep sometimes and not even enough money sometimes, but they do the job. And I think they were able to help out a lot of people that day. And hopefully for the future generations, I believe they've earned your respect. You should give it to them. And if you do your part, go in there to remember that I want to do my part as well if you go into the military. Because it's a great thing It's a hard thing, but you sure can learn a lot from it. For all those families out there who were affected by September 11th, including mine, it's going to get better. You keep your chin up, and you do the best to live a normal life, and you enjoy the freedoms that you have here in the United States, because a lot of people elsewhere, they don't have those. I think I'm all done, and y'all take care, and hope this was educational for you.